Chapter 1884, Hiding in Armor. For a month after obtaining the spirit of sacrifice, Zhou Qi had been concentrating on absorbing its energy and then evolving her own body. Originally, according to Jangi's expectations, it would take at least a few months for her to evolve her life level. However, unexpectedly, it took her less than a month to complete it. This was because, as a doctor, she had thoroughly researched the human body. After hearing the story of the Yihan tribe, she quickly understood the nature of intelligent beings and the truth of evolution. So that in her eyes, the human body was no longer a whole, but a complex machine made up of flesh, bone, even cells, and spiritual essence. Like a butcher cutting up a cow, she saw the essence of the human body. This allowed her to find a shortcut to evolution and to comprehend a brand new ability, immortality. The essence of an intelligent being is spiritual substance, which is a fragment of the ether and has come to this world for the sole purpose of observation. Therefore, as long as the brain, which determines ideology, is not damaged, the ability to observe will remain. Then the rest of the body can be repaired. This can be done with the help of the cell's own division and differentiation. Zhou Qi has mastered this ability, and she can even shape the body according to her own wishes. If she wishes, she can even help others create a body that is all but the brain. Therefore, the current Jangi is no longer the Jangi of the past. Zhou Qi used her powers to completely transform Jangi's body and strengthen his cells. Nowadays, Jangi's body is as strong as it can possibly be for a human. In terms of strength, speed, and reaction, no one on the entire planet can match him. Of course, compared to those enhancement monsters who use their supernatural powers to improve themselves, he may not be as overpowered. But his overall quality has already reached full marks. In this case, coupled with the new demon god armor, Jangi has completely changed his appearance. Weak in close combat? Sorry, that was a long time ago. Now, his close combat abilities are not inferior to those of the upper-level demon gods. Sure enough, a loud noise erupted in the battlefield. Zhang demon sword and King Arthur's Excalibur clashed fiercely, the sound of the clash so loud that it caused ripples in the mirror-like surface of the sea. A terrifying storm swept through, and everyone outside the battlefield could feel the pressure. It was as if two demon gods from ancient times were fighting. After 3 years of learning martial arts from Liang Yu, today was the day that battle fully revealed his talent. As his body surges forward, the power of the demon god armor unleashes itself, giving him the feeling that he can smash a hole in the mountain peak with a single punch. King Arthur has only made contact with him for a moment, and he can clearly feel that something is wrong. You actually have such power. It's really hard to imagine what kind of strange encounter you had in Chernobyl. After King Arthur and Jangi struck, the two of them quickly retreated backwards. Because this tremendous force had reverberated back to them. King Arthur stared at Jangi, and a seed of doubt had been planted in his heart. Because today's Jangi was definitely, absolutely, much more powerful than he had been in the beginning. Jangi raised the sword in his hand, and he glanced at the arm encased in demon god armor. A sense of extreme security made his heart feel warm. Arms that surpassed the mechanical civilization of humans by hundreds or even thousands of years were really useful. No choice. Who says I don't have the best backyard team? Jangi said with a smile. Thinking back, going to Tianqing Academy to save Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen was definitely the best thing he had ever done. In the beginning, for a long time, the two of them were only responsible for making plans and maintaining weapons, building engineering equipment, and never directly participating in the frontline battles. But as Zhang Yi became more and more powerful, they provided more and more help than Liang Yu and Uncle Yu. As expected, the more they get involved, the more helpful they become. King Arthur took a deep breath, his gaze sharpening for a moment. Very well. In that case, I won't have to worry about killing you. Next, I will go all out. He raised the king's sword in his hand, holding it above his head. The white sun in the sky shone a faint light on the tip of the sword, which suddenly burst into dazzling radiance. I, Arthur D. Pendragon, command by the authority of the king. the whole world, submit to the power of my sword. The space seemed to be quiet for a moment, and an invisible wave swept in all directions at breakneck speed. Jangi felt his body being hit by an unstoppable force. In an instant, all the supernatural powers in his body became weaker. Even though he had seen it all through the second hand of time, he was unable to stop it. The king's authority, a power that indiscriminately suppresses all mutants, had weakened his combat effectiveness. Interesting, Jangi felt the power of the void, which really wasn't as strong as before, but the weakening was also limited, probably only about 10%. To other mutants, this is extremely deadly. But for Jangi, it wasn't a big problem. Because he is playing a prop match, the king's authority suppresses the mutants, not their weapons. In the pupil of Jangi's left eye, the ancient pendulum slowly swung. He raised the huge black magic sword in both hands and said, "Come." He crossed the mirror-like, beautiful sea and chose to attack. The body of King Arthur in front of him became magical, with overlapping images, as if a slideshow were being projected. The second hand of time can predict everything that will happen within 4 seconds. And in close combat, anticipating your opponent's moves can give you the upper hand. These afterimages are the future, which will change depending on the choice you make. Clang! The sword crashed into the enemy's sword, followed by a continuous sound of impact. The speed of the two was so fast that the naked eye could hardly catch it. In an instant, they fought from the sea to the sky, and then fell again. This was Zhangyi's first time fighting someone up close, and his experience and skills were not yet mature enough, so he did have a slight disadvantage here. However, the second hand of time completely made up for these disadvantages. For a time, the battle between the two was hard to call. They both had a lot of information about each other and knew a lot about their abilities. Therefore, the only way to force the other person to show a flaw first was through frequent high-frequency battles. While the two were fighting, the mutants on both sides watched from the sidelines, but soon they couldn't tell what was going on either. After all, in order not to disturb them, everyone was very far away from the battlefield, and their figures began to disappear from the smart device's view. On the Britannia warship Elizabeth, Lancelot, who was leaning against the railing, suddenly felt a little bored. He looked at Merlin in front of him and said with a smile, "It's no fun just waiting here. Why don't we find something to do?" Merlin turned his head and looked at Lancelot with a smile. "Oh? What would you like to do, Sir Lancelot?" Lancelot walked over with his sword drawn and a fierce look in his eyes. "The bosses on both sides are fighting so fiercely, we people at the bottom can't just stand around and watch the show, can we?" He turned his head and looked into the distance. "I heard that the Chaos team is made up of some of the best people in the world. I really want to fight against them." Upon hearing this, the other members of the Knights of the Round Table couldn't help but look over as well. The Knights of the Round Table themselves were a top-level mutant team, and there were several Epsilon-level mutants in the team alone. This is because they enjoy the best resources in Britannia, and of course, they have worked hard enough themselves. In the past 3 years, they have fought battles all over the world and even conquered deep-sea secrets like Atlantis. Lancelot suddenly opened his arms and persuaded the crowd, "We have already suffered at their hands after the Gate of Light. How about we find an opportunity to get our ground back? What do you say?" Merlin and King Arthur were both eliminated by Jangi. Merlin narrowed his eyes, unable to read his expression or gauge his emotions. He just kept smiling. "You guys like a good show. But this is a pretty good show." He stretched. "I just wonder what the people across the way are thinking." He was not going to participate. If the 2 bishops of the Knights of the Round Table went down, it would be like taking all of Britannia against a team of mutants from the Huashu Kingdom. Lancelot had no problem with Merlin seeing him and immediately said, "Contact the other side and see if they dare to accept the challenge." Lancelot had Yang Xinshin's contact information when he was in the Demon Kingdom underground in the southwest region. So he contacted Yang Xinshin directly. Yang Xinshin, who received the communication request, glanced at it indifferently. "It seems that they have some special ideas." Zhou Qir frowned slightly. Could it be that they want to engage in a team battle? In that case, it would be very disadvantageous for us. Yang Xinxin said, they are not stupid enough to do that. After all, Jangi was carrying the Tianhai fortress. One should never be suspicious of others, but one should always be on their guard. If the people from the Knights of the Round Table did not follow the rules of martial arts, Jangi would let them know what a super war machine was. Let's see what they want first. Yang Xinxin connected to Lancelot's communication. Long time no see, beautiful Miss Yang. You are still as beautiful and charming as before. Lancelot bowed and said very gentlemanly, but his face was wearing an uncomfortable smile. What is it? Yang Xinxin's voice was cold, without a hint of warmth. Here's the thing, said Lancelot with a smile. We feel that since this time it's a duel between your Tianhai City Mutants team and our two bosses from the Knights of the Round Table, why don't we send a few mutants to take this opportunity to spar a bit? Upon hearing this, Uncle Yu and the others couldn't help but look over. A fighting spirit burned fiercely in their eyes. Flower, who was in Yang Xinxin's arms, also opened his narrowed eyes a little. Want to fight? Lancelot spread his arms wide and his smile was full of provocation. I wonder what your excellency thinks. Of course, this time we are purely sparring in a friendly manner, and there is absolutely no personal animosity. The fight will be just a skirmish, and it will definitely not be a life-or-death duel. But then again, if Miss Yang and your companions are unwilling to fight, he trailed off, his expression even more arrogant, and said with his chin raised, we can understand that. After all, the illustrious reputation of our Knights of the Round Table is known to everyone in the world. Who could listen to this after he had said so much? Uncle Yu's silver teeth almost bit the wrong way, and Fatty Sue also clenched his fists and rolled up his sleeves, saying, damn it, this is too much. Yang Xinxin, however, showed no expression on her face. Oh? You want to spar? Uncle Yu next to her could no longer hold back and said, Miss Yang, just say yes. Let me go have a go at these Western European mutants and see how good they really are. Fatty Sue also rolled up his sleeves and gritted his teeth, saying, yes, we mustn't let others look down on us. Yang Xinxin said to Lancelot, wait a moment. Then she closed the communication. Yang Xinxin turned around and faced the group. Shou Kier looked worried. What are they doing this for? Just to put us down? Lu Karen rubbed her nose, people's names and trees' shadows. At Chernobyl, we also got the limelight. In contrast, the Knights of the Round Table, who were previously praised as the world's #1 mutant team, were eliminated by us one after the other. I think they want to have a group duel with us in order to establish their authority. Uncle Yu raised his fist and said viciously, let's fight them. With our current strength, we are not afraid of them anyway. Jangi's team currently has a total of 6 mutants at the Epsilon level. All of the people present have reached the Epsilon realm. The outside world is not yet aware of these things. If this were to be exposed, it would surely cause an uproar around the world. Yang Xinxin analyzed, they should have 2 motives. The first is, as you said, to establish their authority. But it so happened that during the decisive battle between the 2 bosses, they chose to fight outside the arena. Therefore, I must believe that they hope to interfere in the arena through off-field factors. Even if both sides have agreed that only Brother Jangi and King Arthur will participate in this battle, if the mutant on their side is defeated off the field, it will inevitably affect the arena. Her eyes flashed with an obsidian-like, deep light. They are worried that King Arthur will be defeated. Everyone looked at each other, and in the end, they gave the final decision to Yang Xinxin. Miss Yang, whether we should fight or not, you decide. Uncle Yu said very sincerely. Yang Xinxin thought for a moment, and then said to the others, we can roughly judge the strength of the Knights of the Round Table. There have been contacts, and the strength of a total of 8 people is relatively clear. King Arthur and Merlin are at the rank of bishop. So if there is a fight, Merlin must be asked not to participate. Lancelot, level Black Chariot. It's been over a year since we last fought, and he's made great progress. There are 6 others we haven't met before. but common sense tells us that there must also be mutants of level epsilon among them. They must have gained something by entering Atlantis. Therefore, her gaze swept over the assembled group. We can send 3 mutants to fight, and we can ask the other side to do the same. However, in order to be fair, Merlin may not participate in the battle. Therefore, the difference in ability index between the two sides must not exceed 3,000 points. She held up 3 fingers. Since it is the opponent who requested the duel, there is naturally no problem with us proposing the rules. Therefore, what needs to be determined is the person who will fight. The first, Teacher Liang. The second, Flower. Yang Xinxin did not hesitate for a moment in determining the first 2 candidates. After all, among the martial arts faction, they are, besides Jangi, the 2 most powerful fighters in the team. Of course, if Liu Karen were to pilot the mecha, it would be a different story. But this kind of battle might be a bit troublesome for her to participate in. After all, the opponent could also use this as an excuse to send Merlin to fight, and so on. Uncle Yu and Fatty Su both looked nervously at Yang Xinxin. The third one, Yang Xinxin glanced at Fatty Su. Uncle Yu, you go. No one was surprised. Although Uncle Yu's supernatural ability index did not exceed 10,000 points, he chose the path of mechanical ascension. His current body was modified from the body of a low-level demon god. Compared to the original, there was naturally a significant gap, but it was also enough to face mutants of level epsilon. Uncle Yu nodded forcefully, leave it to me. But at this moment, a sudden voice suddenly sounded next to him. Shit! Everyone looked over, and Fatty Su silently raised his hand. Actually, I want to try too. Everyone looked at him confused. Fatty Su had never been seen as a good fighter in the group's eyes. For a long time, he was responsible for controlling the battlefield in team battles, and rarely had a scene where he fought alone. Fatty Su walked forward, his face showing a determined expression. Uncle Yu, he looked at Uncle Yu, can I have this opportunity? He looked at Yang Xinxin again and said, Ms. Yang, trust me for once, okay? There was no more of the past laziness and evasiveness in Fatty Su's eyes, but instead they shone brightly. It was the light of a desire to prove himself, and Uncle Yu noticed that the fist he had placed next to his body was trembling slightly. Su Chunlei. Uncle Yu looked at Fatty Su, and Yang Xinxin and the others also looked at him. Even Flower slightly opened the slits of his eyes to take a look at this guy. Yang Xinxin said indifferently, you have just broken through the Epsilon realm. You're already busy fighting, don't you know that's dangerous? Fatty Su's eyelids drooped, and he took a deep breath before saying to Yang Xinxin and the others, actually, right now, I'm very strong. Don't you forget what the boss always says, mutants of the ice and snow system are born to be the favorites of this world. I'm not the same as I was in the past. I hope I can get this opportunity. Please. Fatty Su said, and then bent 90 degrees, bowing to the group. He closed his eyes tightly, afraid of hearing the sound of rejection. He thought to himself, all my life, I have been a loser. I'm not handsome, I'm not smart enough, and I've never been popular with girls. When I finally meet a pretty girl, I think I've met true love, but it turns out that either I'm being taken for a fool or the other person is not a woman. But even in this situation, the boss never gave up on me. He even used the spirit of sacrifice, which is priceless to the world, on me. I can't be a loser anymore. I can't be content with holding back the team. After a long while, Yang Xinxin's cold voice came from above him, okay, then you can give it a try. Fatty Su felt like he had been pardoned. He looked up happily, his palms already covered in sweat. Thank you, I won't let you down. Yang Xinxin looked at him and said, don't feel any pressure, after all it's just a friendly match. As your first real battle after your promotion, it's very meaningful. Yes. Fatty Su was full of excitement, while Uncle Yu gave a faint smile and didn't argue with Fatty Su about this opportunity. Yang Xinxin got in touch with Lancelot again and stated their request. Lancelot readily agreed. After all, in his opinion, the mutants of the Knights of the Round Table were all battle-hardened and no weaker than anyone else. he had a broad smile on his lips, feeling invigorated for the battle to come. It's been decided, a total of 3 people will go into battle. I'm definitely going, and there are 2 more spots left, so who's in? The young man with short maroon hair, a childish face, but a tall and burly build said indifferently, I'll go. Percival, a member of the Knights of the Round Table and a holy knight. Another balding man with a big beard scratched his head and said, I'll be in. Gawain, the Sun Knight. The combatants on both sides had been determined, and opponents had been assigned according to their respective ability indexes. Surprisingly, Fatty Sue's ability index was now a whopping 18,000 points. This was something that no one had expected. When you think about it, it makes perfect sense, said Yang Xinshin indifferently. His body has received too many resources from brother Jangi. And as a mutant of the ice and snow system, after crossing the threshold of the life limit, he may usher in a second evolution. Epsilon is a threshold, so to speak, with a strict hierarchy, completely crushing the lower-level mutants. Because at this level, there will be a jump in the life level. Accordingly, when this limit is broken, the body's potential will be greatly stimulated. Liu Karen said with some surprise, we really underestimated him. Uncle Yu crossed his arms as he watched Fatty Sue step into the battlefield. These past 2 years, he's been working really hard to improve. He never missed a training session with the Volt Shadow Troop, and he even asked me for extra practice quite often. He shrugged, it's just that he was too weak before, and you guys didn't pay much attention to him, so that's why there was a stereotype. Uncle Yu looked at the back of Fatty Sue. Fatty Sue was actually not that fat anymore, he just had a round face. His shoulders were wider than before, his figure was more imposing than before, and he didn't pant heavily when walking. Uncle Yu's eyes were full of relief. Su Chunlei, you have done very well. Let everyone see your hard work.